You're watching CBS 8 Mornings at 6.
Biden, we just think that it's time for him to step aside and let someone else, someone younger, take the reins.
Hopefully they can figure out a way to get Kamala, top on the ticket.
You just heard from some San Diegans there reacting to President Joe Biden's decision to end his re-election bid. He endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to become the Democratic Party nominee.
Former President Donald Trump posted on social media, quote, "Crooked Joe Biden was not fit to run for president and is certainly not fit to serve and never was," end quote. Thank you so much for joining us here at 6 a.m. on this Monday. I'm Eric Connert.
And I'm Neda Iranpour. And now the focus turns to who will win the Democratic nomination and who Vice President Kamala Harris will pick as her running mate.
CBS News' Skylar Henry is live in Washington, D.C. now with the latest. Skylar.
Hey there, good morning to you. Yeah, in the hours following President Biden's decision, we've seen top Democrats and really coalitions flock to the vice president with a wave of endorsements. And just in the last few hours, we've learned that the Harris campaign has raised nearly $50 million in terms of grassroots fundraising. The DNC says they want to move forward with a united front and present a nominee that can not only challenge but beat former President Trump in November. This morning, Vice President Kamala Harris is picking up support, just hours after President Biden announced he will no longer seek re-election. The president tweeted, "It is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term," adding his endorsement of Harris and urging the party to come together to beat former President Donald Trump.
With Joe Biden as the heart and soul of our party and Kamala Harris coming out swinging against this ticket, we've got the recipe for victory.
Harris says it is her intention to earn and win the nomination.
Are you ready to make your voices heard?
She's picked up endorsements from multiple labor organizations and party heavyweights like the Clintons. Vice President Harris is piling up support from members of Congress. The DNC says it will soon implement a framework to select a nominee.
The process needs to be open to anyone else who thinks they can make a strong case that they can prevail in the battleground states, and she'll be the stronger for the contest.
Last night, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson called on Biden to resign the presidency after bashing plans to replace him.
It would be wrong and I think unlawful in accordance to some of these states' rules for a handful of people to go in a back room and switch it out because they don't like the candidate any longer. President Biden has been isolating at his Delaware home after testing positive for COVID-19. He'll address the nation later this week. Something else that we are paying attention to is not all of the top Democrats, if you will, have come out to endorse Vice President Harris just yet. We're paying attention to former President Barack Obama's endorsement. He's yet to do so. A source close to the situation says that he will look to endorse whoever the nominee is once that becomes official, similar to what we saw in 2020. We're here on Capitol Hill. I'm Skylar Henry. Back to you.
All right, Skylar, thanks for that live report there. This morning, Senator Joe Manchin told CBS he will not be running for the Democratic nomination against Harris. He told CBS News that he does want to see a competitive process for the nominee. Meantime, we are getting a look at potential running mates for Harris, and they include Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, and California Governor Gavin Newsom. Many believe Newsom could be a possible replacement for Biden, but Newsom ended that speculation by endorsing Harris yesterday. We asked political analyst Laura Fink about who could help VP Harris get elected.
A lot of people will think that electing a woman of color is a risk. And to allay that risk, I think you choose a guy that we're used to seeing in office, someone like a Josh Shapiro, who was the governor of Pennsylvania, somebody like an astronaut, Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona, also from swing states. So when you think about a vice presidential pick, you have to think about what complements and allays voters' concerns about the top of the ticket, and also maybe provides a little something extra with a swingy state.
We will take a closer look at Vice President Harris's background and her potential running mates here in just a few minutes.
And now this morning, we are hearing from local leaders about President Biden's announcement and now endorsement of VP Kamala Harris.
I believe that she is the right person to be our next president and to defeat Donald Trump. Having Trump go back to the White House is absolutely unthinkable. It would be bad for the people of this country. It would be bad for San Diego. So I'll do everything I possibly can to make sure that she is our next president and that he is not.
And that was San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria there speaking during Pride Festival. Meantime, Representative Scott Peters said, quote, "I know how difficult this decision must have been for President Biden and his family, but I feel strongly that it'll help our party defeat Donald Trump. We all owe President Biden immense gratitude." On the Republican side, Representative Darrell Issa saying, quote, "We've had 4 years of Democratic chaos at the border, in business, overseas, in our schools, and on our streets. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris led all of it," he says. So stay with CBS 8. We'll have the very latest on the race for the White House. And you can also go to our website and follow our social media pages.
Right now, some nurses at Rady Children's Hospital are on strike.
The strike expected to last through Wednesday. CBS 8's Chris Groh live outside the hospital to tell us what the nurses are demanding and if this will impact services there. Good morning, Chris.
Yeah, good morning. And again, remains to be seen. This is just a 2-day strike, but what we saw just happen moments ago, loud cheers from a group of nurses that actually have gathered here outside, as well as a lot of the membership team for the union. And they did that cheering because the night shift finally, again, clocked out. And so as you kind of hear and maybe even see behind us, that night shift marking those walking out on the job. And again, those in the membership, those taking part in this strike, not going to be going back to work until Wednesday at 6 a.m. And so this strike has officially begun now. And what they're asking for is that they're simply saying they want to be paid the market rate, that they have fellow nurses, pediatric nurses and other nurses who work at other hospital systems who are simply being paid a lot more than they are. And they want to see that gap close. Now, as we have been reporting here in the past 2 weeks, they did receive an offer that was more than 20% raise over 3 years. That is what the hospital told us was the last offer. The union leadership thought that it was worth a vote. They presented it to the union membership, but the union membership did not accept it, and they went ahead and they voted it down. Now, as for what's going to happen next, is they hope that this strike and that this display here will go ahead and be a bargaining chip, so to speak, when they do go back to the bargaining table. Now, I want to read to you a statement here from the nurses union. You'll see it here on your screen. It says, quote, "While our bargaining team reached a deal, it is ultimately up to the membership to decide, and they have determined that it falls too short of their needs. The proposal does not adequately address the high cost of living in San Diego, the most expensive city in the country, nor does it meet the standards necessary to attract and retain the talented hospitals that our nurses need." Now, of course, we've also heard from the hospital who has said time again that they believe that this was a fair offer. They bring up those numbers, that it's a more than 20% raise over 3 years. And they've also told us in the past that they would be bringing in other nurses to work for those who are out on strike, that they are not going, that they are going to make preparations. Now, we are going to speak with hospital leadership this morning. We have spoken with union leadership, and we will be giving you both sides of those as both sides of this story as our morning progresses. Eric and Netta.
Chris Groh staying on top of this developing story here. Thank you very much for that. Later this afternoon, the San Diego City Council will vote on a proposed 30-year lease for a mega homeless shelter in Middletown.
And today will also be the first time the public will be able to weigh in on this proposed shelter. CBS 8's Regina Rita live downtown now with more details on this plan, and it has been met with opposition. Regina.
Yeah, that's correct. Good morning, Eric and Netta. And today will be the first time the public will weigh in. This is a meeting that will take place later in the evening. But here's the thing. We have been seeing pushback and criticism from the community for the past couple of months. That criticism continued last week when an 18-page report released by the independent budget analyst reported that there were some flaws. So here's what we know. San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria last week announced a tentative 30-year lease deal for Hope and Vine. He believes the proposal proposal ensures that the city's response to homelessness is serious and will provide opportunity for those who are homeless now and who could end up homeless in the future. But an 18-page report has argued otherwise. The independent budget analyst released it last week after it found several financial flaws. The IBA says the price the city would pay to lease the warehouse on Kettner and Vine is above market rate. The report reads that the project could cost the city up to $30 million a year to operate. It also shows that it agrees with the property owner for $18 million in project improvements to be made, and it claims that without new funding, the city would need to cut existing programs or services to pay for this shelter. But Mayor Todd Gloria has argued that the report is not correct. Instead, he says if the deal is accepted, several advantages would kick in, including 19 months of rent waived, $2.4 million in savings. It would also have the property owner responsible for mitigation of any potential hazards identified during renovation process. So back out here, we know a final decision will be made by City Council later today around 2 p.m. We'll be covering this as we continue to cover this story. Stick with CBS 8 and, of course, check back on CBS8.com. I'm Regina Urita, CBS 8.
Regina, thank you so much for that. Now, also today, City Council will decide whether to add a 1% general sales tax measure to the November ballot. It would bump up the tax to 8.75%, providing an additional $400 million a year for things like police and fire services, parks, libraries, and infrastructure.
All right, coming off a big weekend, and we're getting ready for another big weekend. That is July here in San Diego.
It's at least a great time to be in San Diego,
Yes,
right?
it
Every
is.
2-week stretch. There's a lot going on. Yes, Comic-Con is this upcoming weekend. We know there are going to be hundreds of thousands of visitors that are going to be on the streets of downtown. The plus side to being downtown, close to the convention center, close to Waterfront Park, is that at least that is where you're going to find the coolest of temperatures. Coastal communities hang out in that near average range, still exceed average by a few degrees. It's not until you head east toward our inland valleys, toward our mountains and deserts, where things are going to get really hot. Let's start off with a look from the local mountain range, San Miguel. Sunrise was at 5:56. Sunset's not coming until 7:54 p.m. You can see how we do not have the marine layer on hand with us. This is a morning where it hasn't developed, wasn't given much strength, and that means that we should have that sun beaming down on us for the duration of the day. We don't have that 3-4 hour period around sunrise where we get lower UV exposure, more mild temperatures. Instead, we're just going to be climbing from about 7 a.m. all the way through midday. And we expect the coastline to be in about the mid-70s by the afternoon. Now, this is your coastal forecast today, where upper 70s are going to be common, but inland, we're going to be watching for 80s, 90s, and triple digits. Out the door right now, 65 in Oceanside, 64 in Poway, and 66 in Alpine. Heat advisory and excessive heat warning for the inland valleys, the mountains and deserts. Those have been extended through Wednesday of this week. So it stays hot at least through Wednesday, maybe pushed into Thursday. We want to give a mention to the possibility of a few showers and thunderstorms that pop up outside of our area, but could drift towards us. And again, that's a risk with monsoonal moisture that the mountains and deserts see a few showers over the course of today through about Wednesday. Let's check in on traffic this morning. So far, it's been a very quiet start to the day on the morning commute. The only thing that we have to mention that we mentioned about a half hour ago is on the 805. This is the 805 HOV lane, southbound at Sweetwater. What we've been told by CHP on scene is that a vehicle swerved, hit the center divider. Now there's debris in the HOV lane blocking that there. So currently, no major volume on the southbound lanes of the 805. Volume will be picking up on the northbound lanes, though, in the next hour or so. So we'll keep an eye on this. Let's check in on border wait times as well. Right now, a 90-minute wait at the San Ysidro Port of Entry. Otay Mesa Port of Entry taking about 75 minutes.